Call Art Bell toll-free west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. 1-800-618-8255.
And you can adjust this bed to make it any way you want on any given night. So you wake up in the morning without aches, pains, and hurts. Now, we don't expect you to buy the bed. Sight unseen. Actually, from the outside, it looks like any other bed in the world. Inside, viva la différence. I guess that's still okay to say in all parts of Canada, huh? Now, look, we'll send you a videotape, and it will show you all about this bed. Then and only then, if you decide you want to buy it, you get a 90-day exclusive in-home or night trial, whatever, risk-free. Another way, look, they won't be able to if they came to take that bed back from you, you'd guard it with a shotgun. Believe me. The number to call for Select Comfort for the videotape, which is free, is 1-800-448-5700. That's 1-800-448-5700. In a moment, more Ghost to Ghost AM. The secret of making money is the right time. Now is the time to call the number I'm about to give you. Vice President Albert Gore said one thing just right, quote, "Make no mistake about it. The telecommunications industry is by all odds the most important lucrative marketplace of the 21st century," end quote. Act now. Discover how a minimum $7,700 participation in telecommunications right now could bring back to you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and more, plus a yearly income for the rest of your life. And yes, it can be part of your IRA or retirement plan. For complete details and a free video cassette, call them now, toll-free, 1-800-444-1049. Ensure your financial future. Take action now, 24 hours a day. That means now, 1-800-444-1049. For a free investor's report and a video, call 1-800-444-1049. This is from a retired Navy fellow. Art, you had a show about airplane ghosts. Well, here's one about ship ghosts. I am retired, U.S. Coast Guard. I served on the icebreaker Glacier with a ghost. I saw him only one time. I was asleep in my stateroom when I heard a knock at the door. The door opened, and a sailor, that's in quotes, leaned in and said, "Mr. Blank, you're needed in B1 engineering room. One of the mains is making bad noises, and the watch needs you." Got to the engine room fast as I could. The door opened as I got there, and one of the sailors said, "I was just coming to get you." I told him I came as soon as I was called. His reply was, "Huh? This just happened, and I was just coming to get you." Another time I saw the hatch to the emergency diesel generator room close and the lock wheel spin and lock. On entering the compartment, there was no one there. It's a small area with no place for anyone human to hide. The third time the ghost made himself known was to a woman who worked for the district office. She was updating blueprints while we were moored in Long Beach. Suddenly, it burst into the mess hall, so scared she was shaking. She told us she had seen a translucent, transparent sailor walk out of a bulkhead of the passageway, glare at her, continue on down the hall. She never came back on that ship. Jim, U.S. Coast Guard, retired. Shelton, Washington. Thank you, Jim. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hi, Art. This is Jamie calling from Houston, Texas.
How you doing, Jamie?
I'm just fine. I'm a first-time caller, and I want to say that I've personally never seen a ghost, but the story I wanted to tell you has been in the family over 90 years, so I thought I might tell you. It's coming from 3 generations.
You might tell me.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, my grandmother used to tell me, but her grandmother told her when she was a girl, her uncle, her mother's brother, his wife died after they had had a new baby, and he had a little girl that was 6 years old,
right.
And then they had a new baby. Well, when he would get the little girl and the baby bedded down at night, you know, there were no electric lights. It was just old shacks in South Carolina. he would go out late at night, for a couple of hours, but he would leave a fire burning in the fireplace.
Sure.
Well, one night he went out and he didn't come back. He stayed out a little late, and the baby started to cry. And the little girl, being 6 years old, she was afraid because the fire was burning out. She was afraid to get up. So after a while, the baby cried and cried. After a while, she heard this thump, and then something came down the fireplace. So the girl said it looked like a big bird, and the bird stood right in front of the fireplace. And it started fanning its wings. And the fire just rose up, and she could hear a voice saying, "Get up and give Mama's baby some water." She couldn't see the face of the bird. She could only see the back, but she knew that was her mother's voice. So she walked around the bird and got the baby some water. When the baby was back down, the bird went back up into the fireplace just like it came, and the fire burnt real high all night long. And the little girl was telling her father about this big bird that came down the fireplace and told her to get up and give Mama's baby some water. So when he told his mother, which is my grandmother's grandmother, my grandmother's 85 now, she told him never leave the children alone anymore. But it was just amazing how something good, I guess we could call it a ghost or whatever, but the mother just wanted her to get a baby some water, little girl like that.
Well, I suspect in the spirit world there is good and there's evil.
Sure. And I just thought I wanted to share that with you because that's not evil. It was a good thing.
I appreciate it.
And my grandmother's handed it down, and I suppose when my son gets old and has grandchildren, I'll hand it down to him. But thank you, Art, for having me. And I'm listening to you.
All right, I'm glad. Thank you. That's KTRH Houston. Now, I agree with that lady. There's good and there's evil. How many of you saw a movie called The Stand? Her bird story reminded me of this. In The Stand was a wonderful movie. The first hour of it is possibly some of the best I've ever seen. It kind of deteriorated, in my view, after that, the television version. But in The Stand, you may recall the large, black, evil bird. Well, I broadcast, for those of you who are just joining us, from my home, here in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere, in a little town called Pahrump, Nevada. Laugh, if you will. At any rate, our town is famous for many things, but one of them is big, black birds. And the movie they used, the bird they used for the movie, The Stand, came from right here in Pahrump. And those birds are all around me. So these are some of the biggest, but these birds are big enough to carry cats off. You don't mess with the birds out here. I don't know why they're so common to this area, but they're here. Big, big birds. Birds so big that if you can get near them and they begin to take off, their wingspan, as they begin to beat their wings to get their big bodies in the air, you can feel the draft. They are that big. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art. How are you?
Okay. Where are you?
I'm in Reno right now.
Reno, KOH.
That's right.
Yes,
this story happened to me, I would say it was 91, 92. I don't remember the exact date. I was living in Guam.
Guam?
And I was at a friend's house, and he was on his way out of the door. I'd just shown up, and he's like, well, hey, look, I'm going to a rosary, which is really common out there. It's very, very Catholic, and it's kind of like the remembrance of their loved ones that have passed away.
Sure.
He's like, look, I'm on the way to this rosary. How about this? Come with me. We'll keep that way. It'll keep it real short. We'll just stop in. We'll, say hello, blah, 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 whatever, pay our respects, and then we'll take off.
Right.
Well, we get there. Everything's kind of fine. Everybody's kind of just mellow, and it's mostly just the immediate family of this guy that had passed away.
Yes.
And it was a guy that he went to school, my friend had went to school with.
Mm.
And so we're standing there, and the guy that died's little sister came in. She was about maybe 4 or 5 years old, crying. She comes running from down the hall, and I don't remember the dead guy's name, but I'll just say David. She was crying, and her mother's like, what's the matter, hon? And she's like, well, David's here. And she was like, don't want to hear that. Just kind of calm down. She's like, Mommy, David's here. He's here. And the grandmother said, look, just, your mother doesn't need this right now.
Sure.
And so everything was fine for about 15 minutes. Next thing you know, she's standing there. She says, look, there he is. And we all just kind of stopped, and we're all looking down the hall, and there's nothing. And she's like, can't you see him? And we're like, no. And the grandmother by this time is getting a little irate, and the mother's pretty much crying pretty profusely, I guess. And it wasn't a really good scene at this time.
I've got you.
So everything kind of chilled out a while, and I'd say about 5 minutes passed. She walks down the hall, comes back, and she's just saying, look, David wants us in his room now. And, just to kind of humor her, I guess, the grandmother told my friend to go in the room with her.
Sure.
And also her older brother, the one that was older than the one that had died. So I just followed because, I don't know, it's kind of like one of those little horror movies, I guess. You want to know what's going on. So I followed him into the room, and she's like pointing to these I guess they're cupboards or whatever, but they're kind of like sliding doors above the bed, and they're about 6 feet up in the air. And she's like, he wants us to open those. So my friend goes over to open it, and he can't make it budge. He cannot make this little door to this cupboard slide over. So he asked me to help him. And I get up there, and I'm not a little guy. I'm about 200 pounds and about 6 foot.
Right.
And I was budging and just pulling and pushing, and we tried everything to get this open. There's two of us, and we couldn't do it. And, I'm starting to get a little, not really upset, but just aggravated.
Sure.
And she's, starting to cry again, saying, do it, do it, do it. And so the mother walks in, and she's like, calm down, calm down. Well, she said, and then the little girl said, no, he wants me to open it. So my friend picked her up, and she slid it open with not even a budge. It was just like she could have used her pinky.
Yeah.
And in there were a bunch of personal artifacts and pictures, and the first thing that they pulled out was a letter that he had written to his little sister in case something had ever happened to him.
Oh, my God.
And it was the scariest thing. I mean, yeah.
Well, I listen, thank you very much for the story. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. That, though, is typical. And there are two things I would take from that. One, again, a person who has died coming back to give a message that must be given, something that must be released from that spirit before it is released. But the other aspect of that story that I find intriguing is that I believe that children, little children, have more of an ability to see, experience, or touch the other side than we do. Now, I wouldn't pretend to be able to tell you why, and there are adult sensitives, certainly, who have either maintained or nurtured that ability to see or reach or talk to the other side. But children in their innocence, I think, have something that the rest of us begin to lose as we get older because of the noise of society, the noise level, the signal-to-noise level, if you will. It was a deep thing that is either in all of us or was once in all of us or is still in all of us that fades. But, in children, it has not yet faded. So children have a unique kind of sensory ability the rest of us do not have. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
How you doing, Art?
Okay, where are you?
I'm in Canton, Michigan, which is just west of Detroit.
Excellent. WJR, I bet.
You betcha.
All right.
I just want to tell you about a really scary ghost story that involves my brother. This is back in 1983, October 7th.
Yes, sir.
And
you remember the date that well, huh?
Well, I sure do, because I was on the road. I was playing with a band in Saginaw, Michigan.
Ah, yes.
I was playing at the Fordney Hotel. And I finished the job about 2:30 in the morning, and I went up and I had a couple of beers, and I laid down, and all of a sudden, I woke up, and I was at the top of the stairs. We were staying on the second floor of the hotel, and all of a sudden, I felt a arm around me, and it was like I heard a, "Hey, brother, go back to your room. You got to go to sleep." Well, all of a sudden, the next night, I got a call from my mother that my brother had committed suicide, and he had died 2 days earlier on the 6th.
Oh, boy. Any other visits, or was that it?
No, he visited me for about the next week and a half.
He did?
Yes.
And talked with you?
It was like I could feel a cold stare over me.
A presence.
Yes.
Not unusual. Again, really typical.
It was very strange.
People pass, and yet, for some reason, they don't quite pass. They're not quite ready. And I guess that was the case with your brother. Now, I'm curious. Were you comforted by that or frightened by it?
I was comforted very much.
Did it change you?
Yeah, I think it did.
I mean, does it tell you there is an afterlife?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I sure do appreciate your story and your call. Thank you. That is what it's all about. The search. Now, how are we to know there really is another side? Well, he knows. Other people who have experienced things like that, they know. And I may know something, but I don't want to talk about it. I'll let you do the talking. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Well, how art thou, Grandmaster of all Nye County?
Well, thou art fine if you would turn your radio off.
Okay, I sure did. Sorry about that, Art.
Sorry. Where are you?
I'm calling from Fresno, California, and I'm on KMJ 580.
That's the one.
You got it. I want to say one thing. I really enjoy your show, and I enjoy Dreamland immensely.
Thank you. It is a different kind of program.
Well, it certainly is. I think I have nightmares every Sunday night. Well, anyway, if I may relate a story to your audience, I don't know if it's necessarily a ghost story, but I always thought it was spooky, and I always think of it from time to time, and I tell people. Well, one Saturday morning, it was back in 1988. It was 2 weeks before I was going to go out of town. That's how I remember. I started to wake up on a Saturday morning. All of a sudden, this blue light shined. It was like a blue light shine inside of my head.
Inside? Wait a minute. Inside of your head?
Yeah, it's like a TV. All of a sudden, like a TV or an image flickers inside of my head.
Okay.
And then from here, get a load of this. I saw it was like these people, like in a large or a fairly good-sized underground cavern or hallway or room.
Really?
And it was this swath. They were bathed in blue light. There was 4 of them. They were tall. They had, like, jeweled masks on and robes. And I had the feeling that the ones in the black were women, and their hair was, like, kind of longish and black. And then the men had gray robes, and their skin was, like, white, like Mickey Mouse. And it lasted for about 30 seconds. And then from time to time, I think of it, maybe it's symbolic of something or what. But I'll tell you, I was sure startled. But I think subsequently, I've told people about it, and they said, well, maybe there's a symbol there. Or
what would you call that? A vision?
I don't know. But for a moment, since then, I haven't had something like this. But ironically, I'd been thinking that before I went to sleep, how we can possibly communicate with our ancestors psychically, and I don't know if it's a possibility.
Why do you think they were your ancestors?
Well, I mean, I got to thinking about that subject by coincidental. I don't think that they are, but I got the feeling they're from overseas. I don't know if that's of any importance.
Maybe.
Or not.
All right. Thank you very much. Maybe what happened is you just sort of crossed psychic paths for a few moments with somebody who was doing some kind of experiment somewhere else. or somebody else who was dabbling in areas they perhaps should not have been, and you were simply the receptor for that tampering. Now, that's an absolute stab in the dark for somebody who is simply a talk show host and listened to your story. I don't have the slightest idea what it was. But if you'd had a couple, it certainly would sober you up, wouldn't it? We'll be back. There'll be more. This is Ghost to Ghost AM. Complex for about 2.5 years. I work nights, therefore I sleep in the day. Figures. I do too. After a few months after moving into my apartment, I'd be awakened from a sound sleep by the feeling that someone was in bed with me. It was as though someone was thrashing wildly about the bed. But when I looked at the bed, it was as empty as was the bedroom. This happened every day during the month of September and stopped after September 21st. I thought it was just a sleep disorder. Since it seemed to have disappeared, I soon forgot it. Then, the following September, the same thing happened. And just as before, it stopped after the 21st. I went to my doctor. I discussed it with him, and he gave me some pills. Anyway, last month, it began again, and the pills did not work. As the 21st approached, the thrashing feeling would be more intense and last longer to the point where I could no longer get any sleep. Now, after 2 days of no sleep, I came home from work, and a neighbor who I've been having a passing acquaintance with noticed my haggard look. He asked me if I was sick. I told him that I wasn't getting much sleep lately. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I told him of my strange tale, but I left out the thing about it only happening during the month of September. Now, this guy has lived at this complex for 15 years, and here's what he told me. Quote, I often wondered why no one stayed for very long in your unit. Now I think I know. Back in September of 1981, a young lady lived in your apartment, and later that month was found dead on her bed. The autopsy showed that she had been strangled and put up one hell of a fight, end quote. Now I believe the thrashing about my bed is the spirit of this lady. Another thing that's strange is that it only happens during the day, not the night. Therefore, I feel she must have died during the day. What do you think? What should I do? Jim in Phoenix, Arizona. Buddy, I wouldn't begin to try to tell you what to do. I don't know. More Ghost to Ghost AM in just a moment. I call it that. Normally, the name of the show, by the way, is Coast to Coast AM. But tonight, and maybe a bit of tomorrow night, it's Ghost to Ghost. Many of you health-conscious folks are familiar with antioxidants and their amazing health benefits. Now, vitamin C is probably the most famous of these. UCLA scientists found that antioxidant vitamin C can help avoid cancer, strokes, heart attacks, increase life expectancy an average of 5 years. Well, now, there are new antioxidants on the market. And listen, scientists say they are 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times the power of vitamin E, another antioxidant. They're called pycnogenols, the super antioxidants. You want to remember that if you're a health-conscious individual. Why? Well, according to Richard Passwater, Ph.D. and authority in the field, you're being bombarded by something called free radicals, toxins, environmental and otherwise, that break down cells, damage tissue, cause you to age faster, develop stiff joints, and wrinkle sooner than you ought to. How can you fight these free radicals that bombard you every day? Antioxidants and pycnogenols are the most effective antioxidant you can buy today. To order this amazing new food supplement I'm taking, call the folks at Health Naturally at 1-800-856-1119. These pycnogenals are pharmaceutical grade, made from 95% pure grapeseed extract. It's the very purest on the market, giving you the most benefits. Call 1-800-856-1119. That's 1-800-856-1119. One other note, then it's back to the stories. It involves absolutely fresh flowers. This is a company in Southern California that sends only good spirits, emotions, love, feeling, caring. And they send them directly to you or to the person you want them to go to the next day. Here's the deal. It's a flower farm. They sell flowers to you minus the cost of getting them there at the wholesale rate. So when you call the flower farm, they actually go out, cut the flowers, pack them up in this big triangular box, and they go off next day by FedEx. So you call today, the flowers are delivered during the week tomorrow. Pretty good, huh? Or if you've got a birthday or anniversary coming up and you want to settle your mind now, you can call, and for $39.95, you get this incredible shipment of flowers. And miniature carnations, every color of the rainbow. You get a little card with your message, your name, flower, preservative, and delivery, all for $39.95. Try and beat that anywhere. The number to call 24 hours a day is 1-800-562-6438. Let me give that one more time. 1-800-562-6438. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning. Where are you calling from, please?
Houston, Alaska.
Houston, Alaska.
Right.
All right. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. My name's Linda.
Hi, Linda.
And let me tell you first that I was born on Friday the 13th. And this story that I'm going to tell you happened to me 35 years ago when I was 13 in a place called Westfield, Massachusetts.
All right.
And at 13, I went to a public school there. And at 13, I had a crush on a boy that went to Catholic school. And I talked a couple of my friends in on a Monday night to go to see him after catechism got out.
Ah, yes.
And we had a curfew time. We had to be home. And we knew we were going to be late. So my friends, which was kitty corner to the church, was an old cemetery. And it had the wrought iron and the stone wall.
Oh,
and
yes.
As a child, I don't remember it ever being used, but it was an old cemetery. It was pretty shut down. And my friends talked me into going through the cemetery to take a shortcut home. So I was always a tomboy. I wasn't afraid of anything. So we took off through the cemetery running. And halfway through the cemetery...
Well, if you weren't afraid, then why were you running?
Well, we had a deadline to get home.
I've got you. All right.
Okay. We took off running through the cemetery. And halfway through the cemetery, I fell through the ground.
I beg your pardon?
I fell through the ground.
Through the ground. In other words,
into a hole which I assumed was a grave.
Grave, yeah, right.
And the dirt came in down around me.
Oh, boy.
And I was screaming. I had bugs that I assumed were termites. They had wings on them that I was covered with.
Oh, my God.
And at that time, as 13 years old, I was only about 5'1". I didn't know how I was going to get out of here. I remember screaming. And I felt something around my feet, a pressure, nothing, that was grabbing onto me, but some kind of pressure that lifted me up out of that dirt. And I was at a dead run, and I didn't stop until I got to the other side of the cemetery. And my friends were there, and I was covered with dirt, and I was covered with all these, which I assume probably were termite bugs that were all over me. And I never, to this day, have been in a cemetery. I'm 48 years old, and I've never been back in a cemetery to this day.
I cannot say I blame you. That, to me, would be the end of me, dear, because I would have a heart attack right on the spot.
That was very scary.
Fortunately, your heart was young enough to take it, I guess.
Right.
Great story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care from Alaska. Oh, man. Can you imagine running across a cemetery in the dark, falling into a grave with bugs crawling all over you? I remember you remember Poltergeist? I don't know, it's etched into my memory. Do you remember at the end when the graves began popping up and they fell into the pool? Do you remember that? And the skeletons and the sort of half-fleshy, half-non-fleshy things began popping up in the pool. I wouldn't make it through that. I wouldn't even begin to make it through that. I'd turn around in that mucky water and look at one of those flabbing flesh things, and I'd have my heart attack on the spot. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Hello, Art.
Hello, where are you?
Austin, Texas.
Austin, welcome.
Yes, I'm calling about a story that if my family finds out I'm telling this, I'm going to be in big trouble, but it occurred in Louisiana about 100 years ago, and it's still occurring to this day.
Oh.
It's a 100-year-old ghost story that occurred originally in Coshada, Louisiana, and I had an aunt and uncle that lived 100 years ago, several generations removed, and they were recently married, and my aunt died shortly after the marriage, and the uncle was completely devastated. And when he was going to bury his wife, she was in her 20s, they hadn't been married for a year, he had the coffin ordered from New Orleans. He wanted a special coffin, he wanted a glass coffin, and he wanted her buried in Metairie Cemetery in New Orleans.
Metairie. Mm-hmm.
And he was told that it would take 6 months for the coffin to be ordered, and so he waited for the coffin to come up to Shreveport, up to his area, and he would keep the corpse upstairs in his house in the bedroom, and according to the servants at the house, he would kiss the corpse every night before he would go to bed.
Oh, boy.
The servant said that, he would order them to take the corpse out every day and air the corpse out in a wheelbarrow, and for 6 months. And he had a Ouija board, as you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
A Ouija board. The servant said he would talk to the corpse every night and have conversations. And apparently this was a jealous ghost. And the servants were horrified. They would not clean this room. They said that candles wouldn't light when they went up there. There was cold air. The candles would blow out. They could hear low-level whispers, and they said objects would fall from the room. And at night, they would, after a while, after a certain point, they would hear conversations between my uncle and some
corpse.
other voice.
Some other voice, the corpse, I presume. Oh, my.
And so, as I say, no one would go into this room for many years. Eventually, the glass coffin did arrive. They did bury her in Metairie Cemetery in New Orleans. She's still there to this day in the crypt. And
did that end it?
No, because up until the 1970s, all of my relatives who would go to visit this house would not visit that room. They still said that cold area was still there. They could still feel the presence. I remember going there as a child with my aunt. My aunt had shaky legs; she wouldn't even walk up the stairs. They could hear the squeaky wheels of the wheelbarrow at night of the wheelbarrow that was supposed to air out the corpse. They could still hear that in the 1960s and 70s. And there was a portrait that they couldn't photograph.
Is this something that your family will not talk about?
It's not something that they're proud of. There is, but it is something that everyone knows about. And there is a certain member in the family who is a keeper of the key to the crypt, who does have a key to the...
Would you go in there?
Yeah, I guess I would. Just out of curiosity, because it's been something I've heard about all my life, and I'm curious about it.
All right. Well, I listen, I very much appreciate your call, but there's no way that I would. There's no way. Absolutely no way. Now, you tell me, you explain to me, but that man is just like the women in the low-cut dresses who, the moment you hear the bump and the grind in the basement, immediately do what? They go down the stairs to the basement, the one place where you know they ought not go. Everybody knows evil things lurk in dark basements, but there you go, straight down there. And see, if that fellow had the key, where would he go? He'd go look at the body. I know he would. I wouldn't. Would you? Listen, I want to, God, that was weird. I want to tell you two things. One, if you would like a copy, and we have over 2 more hours of this program yet to do. This is one program that we make available to the audience. If you would like a copy of the program you are listening to right now, you can call 1-800-917-4278. Let me give you that number again, because I know a lot of you are going to want it. It's 1-800-917-4278, and it is good now, 24 hours a day. It is the Ghost to Ghost Halloween show. One other little item. We know we're going on in a whole bunch of new affiliate areas this morning. Love to hear from you by fax. We do have a 24-hour-a-day fax service, which sounds pretty fancy. It's really just a fax machine in my living room. The number is area code 702-727-8499. Let me give that to you again. I'd love to hear from somebody in New York confirming we're on way back in New York, Rochester. Area code 702-727-8499. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Well, hello, Art.
Hello.
Scott from Graham, Washington.
Hello, Scott.
And this is something that happened over on the west side of the Olympic Mountains.
Yes, sir.
And it's up the Queets River. Anyway, we were, there was 4 of us, and we had 2 pickup trucks and 1 camper on 1 truck. And we went up to this beautiful spot where the river, and on the other side of the river is a cliff with these just huge boulders, probably 5 to 1,000-pound boulders.
Big
just
rocks.
Huge.
Big rocks.
Big rocks. And so we got up there, and it was dusk, and when it's dark up there, I mean, it is dark. I mean, you can't even see your hand in front of your face.
Understood.
And so we decided to sit all in one camper and have a good old poker game.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all sitting around playing poker, and it was about 1:30 a.m., and we heard some splashes in the river, and we heard some grunts.
Grunts.
Yeah, just kind of huge grunts. So we figured it was probably a bear out there having fun in the river, you know.
Don't like grunts.
Yeah, and so after a while, the grunts seemed to get louder, and we heard like big rocks hitting each other. You know how you can hear the crack of rocks?
Of course.
And after a while, these rocks seemed to get closer and closer to our camper. And you could feel the rocks hit the ground outside to kind of a big thud. And I'm telling you, we all looked at each other and we said, nobody's going outside. I mean, we were armed to the teeth, but we were scared to death.
I wouldn't. You mean like those gigantic rocks, you know, coming out of the air and hitting the ground like that?
Yes. It's just like
bad.
somebody was over there throwing these huge rocks.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, I wanted to call you last week about the Sasquatch sounds because you wouldn't believe this. I mean, the hair on the back of our necks was standing up. It's standing up now.
Was it like the sound I've got?
It was close, but not really. I mean,
we're closer to the first one that Linda Howe sent or the second one?
The second one.
That,
and
you
these
mean
sounds,
that I don't know what I would call that. I would call that, it almost sounds human. To me, it sounded like a man in horrible, horrible agony. That's the only way I can think to put it. Is that about the way it sounded?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it, Art. It was just about like that, and it was echoing up and down the river, and it was terrible. We were terrified, and these rocks you could almost hear them whistling through the air, and they were crashing on the other side of our camper. They were hitting in the water, and the cracking of the rocks, and this went on, Art, for 3 hours. And we were
What do you guys
scared.
do? You just sit there and sort of shake at the table,
Well,
or what?
we're on the floor of the camper. We just couldn't move. We didn't know if one of these rocks were going to hit us.
Now,
or
you
what.
see, that sounds realistic to me. That's where I'd be, floor of the camper. You betcha.
And we were armed to the teeth, let me tell you. And I was ready for anything. And this went on for 3 hours, and it was about like 4:30 in the morning, and the sun started coming up. And we're all looking at each other going, thank God.
Yeah.
Especially because I had to go to the bathroom. But anyway, and so we finally had enough nerve to go outside the door because the crashing and everything had stopped like about an hour before the sun came up.
See, I would have waited, too, for the crashing to stop and for the sun to come up. Okay, sounds good so far.
Okay, so we decided we'd go outside. And finally we opened up the door, and we all got out, and I said, you guys get out here, you got to see this. And the other truck was just fine. But around our truck and the camper were these huge boulders in a circle around the camper.
Oh, my God. What, I presume to this day you have no idea what it was.
No, but it had to be something
awfully big.
Awfully big. Because it took us pushing with one truck and pulling with another to get him far enough out of the way so we could get the truck and the camper out.
That's an incredible story. Do you swear that's true?
Oh, yes. And this happened in 1975 because it's when I got out of the service, and all four of us got together because we used to go on camping trips when we were in high school. And to this day, when we get together, I mean, this, this is something we always talk about.
You still talk about. I can imagine you would. Well, that one is almost a topper. What an absolutely incredible story. And so that's where it ended. You hauled the rocks away, and that was it.
Yeah, we pushed them out of the way, and we got out of there, and I have never been up there again.
I can't blame you. Thank you.
I will not go.
Thank you very much for the story. Thank you, sir.
Art.
Take care. Something that big with those kinds of rocks. No, thank you. This is Ghost to Ghost AM. I'm Art Bell. For some, we'll be right back.